Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Pierce McGuire, and this is Shiva Ayyadurai vs. Flat Earth Dave, Part 3, our continuing logical analysis of this absolute train wreck of an encounter. We can't even call it a debate. I mean, this is just pure cowardice. I mean, very, very tough to watch, painful to watch. I mean, we must have a glutton for punishment for even continuing to do this. But MINDSHOCK is comprehensive and exhaustive, so we can't stop now. Can't make any promises that we're going to get even close to finishing this, because the level of gophery that Shiva Ayyadurai has presented here, everything from pretending to advocate first principles and then completely not, to not even knowing the steps of the scientific method. Let's bring up the preschool worksheets, the preschool definitions. Let's get it all up on the screen here. I mean, painful really is the best word to describe all of this. I don't even know. I mean, this kind of vegetative goofery is something we would expect from, people like Destiny or Dave McKeegan, this kind of vegetative goofery that Shiva has plummeted to. I mean, I had to actually stop the previous part when Shiva's starting to, he's hallucinating variables are assumptions of negatives. I mean, can you imagine if you want to, let's say, do some kind of rocketry tests or rocket experiments, and then Shiva interrupts, hold on a second. Is one of your variables the assumption that the invisible flying spaghetti monster isn't real? Because maybe the rocket's going to hit the invisible flying spaghetti monster. So you have to have those variables clearly defined. Is one of your variables that you're assuming the invisible flying spaghetti monster isn't real? I mean, that's what Shiva's bringing to the table here. Just the gaslighting and pretending Flat Earth Dave is not being absolutely clear here. I mean, I think it's impossible for Flat Earth Dave to be more clear than he's being. So, yeah, I mean, welcome to all you gluttons for punishment in the chat here. We got Flat Bob, Run Boston Bear, Matari Sensei, Hold the Line South to West, the one and only Heracles as well in the house here. Hold the Line says, this won't be as funny as the Nathan Oakley debate. Yup, painful is the word. As always, if you want to help support the MINDSHOCK podcast, help logic and reason return to a world where it is quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Make sure you're subscribed as well. If you're not getting updates, you can also become a free patron. The free tier will give you all the updates that YouTube might not give you when we're going live here. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. Or if you were with us here live in the live chat, and I will try to get to each and every one of them. So yeah, this is pretty tough to get through. The once brilliant Shiva Ayyadurai, who knows what Nanny Fine has done to this man, but I don't know, is his brain just completely fried to the point where he no longer comprehends the scientific method, first principles, or even basic logic of any kind? This is a good freeze frame on the last point that he made, where he's telling Dave that everything has to be clearly defined, and he's telling them, is one of your variables assuming that gravity isn't real? Oh man, again, this is something, vegetative debaters like Destiny, I mean, it's something you expect somebody like Destiny to say, some completely brain dead goof. But this once brilliant man saying that, I mean, yeah, this is really, really tough here. Welcome Johnny Sizzle Chest and Bubs. Bub says, this is a banger series, Bruce. Seeing Shiva malfunction with your commentary is extremely helpful. Well, yeah, that's also why I always advocate the study of psychology in addition to logic and reason. Because if you only have one or the other, you're not really going to get a true picture of what's going on. All right, so let's jump right in here. Let's see how much we can stomach for this part.
These are my assumptions, or these are my initial variables. Yeah. And based on these initial variables, I'm making this hypothesis. So what are your initial variables? There is no gravity. That's one of the things you're just bringing up now.
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with this, but we can get into what gravity is if you want.
No, David, forget gravity, forget round Earth.
He's the one bringing it up. Dave wasn't the one who was bringing up gravity. Wow. Okay. I don't know. This is so difficult. It's one of his copes is timeout. I need to think about this deeply, like as if it's that difficult to think of a globe that's 70% water, that the water would have to curve around the globe. Otherwise, the oceans would be jetting out into space if they weren't curving around the globe. Like, Shiva actually needs to think about that. He can't just visualize like a small child can, just a concept. He can't do it. And now he's the one bringing up all these diversion, red herring, logical fallacies and false premises. And then he's saying forget about them as soon as Dave points out. Dave, who didn't bring it up, points out that it's not related. And now Shiva's saying forget about it after he was the one that brought it up. Oh, man. Oh, man. We really are gluttons, aren't we? We're all gluttons for punishment for trying to get through this.
Flat Earth. I'm just saying when you start with the scientific method, you come with a hypothesis.
No. And look how he's got his first finger up. As if hypothesis is step one. I mean, that's what he claims at the beginning. It's clearly not. I mean, anything from preschool worksheets on the scientific method to more K through 12 material or college material, hypothesis is never I've never seen it as step one. Now, there are some variations depending on older encyclopedias. You can find some variation. Hypothesis is never number one, though. Without an observation or any kind of research or conceptualization, you can't even, like, how do you come up with a hypothesis without observation? Like, why would, it wouldn't even be necessitated. So, when he's missing this level of basics, I mean, I don't know, what is somebody like Flat Earth Dave to do? Because honestly, I never thought I would say this. If we were doing a MINDSHOCK moderated debate, Shiva wouldn't pass the 5-minute test at the beginning. He would have flunked it by trying to claim the hypothesis is step one. So he would have never even got to the debate. I never would have thought that a power, or at least a former intellectual powerhouse like Shiva Ayyadurai, he wouldn't even qualify to debate on MINDSHOCK. He would fail, like the Craigs of the world, like the Destinies, like the goofs who don't understand basic logic. So, I mean, obviously Flat Earth Dave is polite here, but I don't know how he's making it through this. Like, looking at Flat Earth Dave's face here, this is probably the most frustrated I've ever seen him, which is saying a lot. I mean, he's been in there with the goofiest of goofs. He's been in there with complete vegetables. And he didn't look this frustrated. Welcome, Iron's cat. I mean, just the level of vegetation that Flat Earth Dave has to put up with here. And, I mean, he's just such a polite guy. What more can we say about that?
Then you go down to the methodology that you're going to use to validate your hypothesis, what you call the experiment. Then you're going to say what data I'm going to collect. So if we were to take a fresh, clean sheet of paper, we'd write down what is a hypothesis.
Hypothesis is that the Earth is flat.
But it's more than that, because you're saying that the Earth, because then you're going to propose an experiment. Your experiment is based on not just being the Earth is geometrically flat. You're basing that on some other, all additional hypotheses.
But he's not. Like, where are these hallucinations coming from? I mean, now he's just spamming strawman fallacies. Like, where are these hallucinations coming from? It seems like Shiva's watched a couple clips of Flat Earth Dave debates, and he's watched him debate several different topics, and he's mixing it all up together and pretending that has something to do with a lack of observable curvature. Again, I'm not claiming that proves any shape, but that's the observation. That's the actual step one of the scientific method, is the observation, not the hypothesis. So Shiva here, I don't even know. I mean, again, like I said in the previous episode, the new coined phrase here, the only thing I can see that aptly describes what's going on here, Shiva Ayyadurai is lost in his own goofery. He's completely lost. Because he doesn't know the steps of the scientific method. He completely forgot first principles. And he doesn't even know what Dave's position is or what Dave is even trying to say. Because he won't stop interrupting. And so he's strawmanning now about Dave's assumptions. Instead of, because Dave started off with simply falsifying alleged curvature. That has nothing to do with any new hypothesis or any new experiment. I mean, this entire so-called encounter, I can't call this a debate. This is not a debate. This encounter, this train wreck encounter, is Shiva utterly failing to even engage in basic, forget debate, basic conversation with a fellow human being. He's too cowardly. I mean, and again, the irony here, in his hubris, he's so terrified of looking stupid that he's made himself look that much more stupid. Because he's cowering behind the scientific method, which he doesn't even know, because he doesn't know step one. He doesn't know there is no scientific method without an observation. Because you can't get to any kind of hypothesis without an observation or concept or research of something. You need some kind of observations or ideas to ever even get to a hypothesis. So, just the level of goofery on display here. Flat Earth Dave was just talking about the falsification of alleged curvature. That's it. He didn't even start off claiming the Earth was flat. He was just saying, isn't it interesting that supposedly there's supposed to be this amount of curvature? I mean, again, Flat Earth Dave is very polite here, but I wonder if Flat Earth Dave says, well, I don't know what the shape of the Earth is, but it seems to be a problem that you can't observe curvature. What do you think, Shiva Ayyadurai? Are you a globe earther? Like, what's the evidence that you have? Because then Shiva wouldn't be going on this cope spiral of a kind of vegetative goofery we haven't really seen before. Welcome, Seabass. Seabass says, let's cut Shiva a tiny slack when it comes to the scientific method. He comes from technology and coding, which revolves around the same thing, doing something different whenever it wants, aka insanity. Talk to programmers and they have all kinds of stories about the type of stuff happening. Yeah, that's no excuse, because he's also in engineering and medicine, so, and you know, GMO crop, like, this is, it's not just tech and computer coding. Like, he's well-rounded and experienced in many different fields. Not to mention, this is basic of the basics. So, let's not cut him slack for that. I've cut him far too much slack already for his history of going up against the establishment, which I should not have done. I was biased here. I try not to be. But again, I'm a mere mortal. I was biased. I really try not to be. But I think I cut Shiva way too much slack in part 1. In part 2, where he started showing his true colors and he started gaslighting Flat Earth Dave by pretending he wasn't being clear. Flat Earth Dave cannot be any clearer. Aaron says, I've worked many decades as a software engineer. I can see what you mean, although it's a bit of an overstatement in my opinion. I mean, yeah, but this is children's level basics. I mean, the field doesn't even matter here. We're talking children's level basics. Not to mention, again, Flat Earth Dave was just starting off. He was actually engaging with the scientific method. Shiva's not. In just observing what's going on and asking questions. I mean, if there's X amount of curvature, why is it not seen? What do you think, Shiva? Can you help me out here, Shiva? I actually think Mark Sargent probably would have done a pretty good job with Shiva because he kind of talks a little bit more generic like that. But let's continue here.
Well, I'm basing it on the fact that the globalists, the science, today's science that they teach us from the Rockefeller-funded textbooks, tell us that the Earth curves at 8 inches per mile squared. That's what they tell us because we live on a ball 24,901 miles around. But the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, 1,040 to be exact, right? At the equator, slower in other areas because it's making a smaller circle as you get closer to the alleged poles, right?
So what's going on here? Does Shiva simply have the attention span of a schoolgirl and he's going to text his buddy or checking TikTok real quick? Or is he just that impolite and disrespectful and ignorant that he's not sure if what Dave is saying is true? He wants to double check it. Like, what's going on here? I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I don't even remember goofs like Craig just randomly going on. I mean, maybe they did, but in the debates I've seen, they at least have a certain amount of, I hesitate to call it decorum. I mean, Craig does not really have decorum. But I don't remember Craig just randomly going on his phone. Even Soy Lodge. I mean, Soy Lodge might have. I think he was on his laptop. But that doesn't look as bad because the laptop, maybe you're checking the stream or something, or checking super chats or whatever. But clearly Shiva's not doing any of that. His phone's not plugged into anything. It's kind of weird. I mean, he is wearing, I mean, this whole presentation is weird. Like, can he not afford heating? Like, why is he wearing this warm jacket indoors? I mean, he can't afford heating? I mean, this guy invented email. I mean, I don't know what's going on here. Does anybody have any thoughts here? This entire train wreck of an encounter just doesn't make any sense here. Seabass says, maybe his handler gave him new instructions based on the way the debate was going, but talking in his ear would be obvious or something. Matari Sensei says maybe he's in Antarctica. I think he would probably need a lot warmer jacket than that. That almost looks like it's weird. That looks like a motorcycle type jacket with that strap, but it doesn't look like a leather one. Unless it's like a super bootleg one. I don't know. It's like a cheapo material one that you'd buy on like the sidewalk in some metro area. Like back in the day, I mean, I'm assuming it was in LA too, but New York was kind of big for just bootleg clothes and CDs and movies. You know, back in the 90s, you could actually, in the late 90s, you could actually get theatrical releases on bootleg VHS. Some of them, I'm not sure all of them were just people like that Seinfeld episode where they're smuggling in the video camera to film the theater screen. I don't think it was that. It looked like they had some kind of transfer maybe for award shows, like some kind of screener video. Because sometimes it did have that text on the bottom. But anyway, Miss Rex Murphy says a vegan biker jacket. Oh man, that's funny. BB says, some people feel colder in general. Yeah, don't they usually wear sweaters? Not outdoor jackets indoors? I mean, yeah, like I've known people who you know, they wear an extra hoodie or sweatshirt in the summer, but I don't remember, I don't recall them ever wearing an actual outdoor jacket in their own living room or bedroom or office, indoors.
And then it's orbiting at 66,600 miles an hour, speeding up and slowing down, average speed 66,600. All of these are curved trajectories. We're also chasing the sun at close to 500,000 miles per hour. So you got this lumpy rock surrounded by water, surrounded by high pressure air, adjacent to a void of no pressure called space. And it's making 4 different motions at once, and none of it is ever felt anywhere. No one ever can measure it. No one can ever see it or anything. But when you go out into nature, you see stuff like this, right? You see.
I don't care about all. I'm just
right.
saying, let's just take a clean sheet of paper.
I mean, that's kind of a pathetic of a cope. I don't care about all this. He doesn't care about science. He doesn't care about questioning. He doesn't care about reality. Like, on a certain basic level, Flat Earth Dave should just say, can you help me out here, Shiva? You're an accomplished intellectual. You're an academic. Academic. You have all these degrees. You're an engineer. Can you just help me out a little here? You know, the establishment is saying that all this is going on, and yet that's not what's observed. There's no actual scientific experiment adhering to the scientific method with clearly delineated independent variables, dependent variables, and controls that demonstrate any of this. Can you simply help me understand this model, Shiva? That's what Flat Earth Dave should be saying. Because Shiva keeps shifting the burden of proof and just throwing it all on Dave. Dave is not the one that came up with all of these claims. All of these claims of all these multi-directional movements throughout the cosmos. The claim of the spin of the Earth. Flat Earth Dave is not the claimant. So I would have just humbly asked Shiva, can you help us understand the heliocentric globe? Or, Shiva, do you not believe that the heliocentric globe model is true? Just help us out here, Shiva. So I would not have allowed him to shift the burden of proof like this, because what are his answers here? And saying, I don't care about this, that's like a teenager throwing a temper tantrum. I mean, this is a supposed man of science, a supposed intellectual, a supposed anti-establishment truth seeker. And he's saying, I don't care about this? He doesn't care about the nature of reality? He doesn't care about what the Earth is or what we're even on? I mean, is it possible to be more anti-science than that? Yeah, I mean, this is why this is not hilarious. This is not funny. This is just painful. We are simply gluttons for punishment at this point. I mean, does anybody in the chat have any kind of thoughts on this? Like, even random low IQ goofs in their mom's basement care. Not all of them, but some of them only care about video games, but some of them might actually care. Some of them find this interesting. Some of them are more scientifically inquisitive. The actual nature of science. Asking questions, being curious about the natural world. They're curious. Shiva's not. Shiva doesn't care about any of this. Flat Bob says, I find it a little funny. Okay, if you never respected Shiva Ayyudarai as a man of science, then I guess it is funny. I can see that. I mean, humor is subjective, of course. But if you followed Shiva to a certain extent, I mean, it's kind of hard to find it funny. Flat Bob says, Baha, clean sheet of paper again. So according to this clean sheet, so is Shiva claiming the heliocentric model isn't valid? Because if we're going clean sheet, like I would ask Shiva, what's the next step? Because he keeps putting it all on, he keeps shifting the burden of proof on Dave. Because in this instance, the reason why this is a shifting the burden of proof fallacy, because Dave is not claiming the Earth is flat here. Not in this moment here. He's simply laying out the claims made by the establishment. and he's asking questions about them. And Shiva is shifting instead of addressing it honestly, instead of having an honest conversation, he is cowardly. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to be more cowardly in a discussion than Shiva is being right now. Lord Zed says, I hate that guy's rotten guts, so it's really funny for me. Why, though? I mean, this guy's exposed GMOs and so many things. I mean, he's one of the few hardcore anti-establishment scientists. I know he's not acting like a scientist in this encounter, but outside this encounter, on topics not the shape of the Earth, he's pretty scientific. Seabass says, I'll be honest, the idea of someone lying about the shape is more important to me than the shape itself. Especially if the liar holds tremendous power on the world scale. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, what's this crazy investment in the shape of the... Like, it's kind of weird. Like, I mean, just about every profession would not require you to know the shape of the Earth. I mean, a lot of goofs pretend pilots would need to know. No, they wouldn't. I mean, if they can get to where they need to get to with whatever map they're using, they don't really need to know the shape. I Am Ion's Cat says, this guy is frightening. He's not a scientist at all. He's not behaving like one in this conversation, but if you read his work, he is a scientist, or was. I don't know what's going on with this guy now. I mean, I don't know how much damage Nanny Fine did to this guy's brain. Bub says, like, Shiva didn't research the topic in the slightest and has never had a serious topic on the subject matter, at least with someone challenging academia's story. Lack of respect, exposing weaknesses. I mean, there might be some of that, unless... Okay, what if Shiva's a flat earther and his only goal here was to somehow get other so-called academics to seriously get involved under the guise of pretending to try to expose the flat earthers with the goal of proving the flat earthers correct. Now, I'm not claiming the shape of the Earth. I'm not saying the flat earthers are correct. But if Shiva's a flat earther, and I'm not claiming his, again, this is just a theory, just throwing this out there, food for thought. Once again, the mark of an educated mind is to consider a concept or idea as true without believing in it. Without believing in it. Scientism, cultists, and coincidence theorists have a really hard time with that one. But if Shiva really is a flat earther, and he's trying to entice all of these academics to as if he's trying to help expose flat earth and prove flat earth wrong while setting up the experiment to prove flat earth true. That would be kind of funny. So part of that act would have to include, you know, in order to get all the academics and so-called scientists on board with this, he would have to act a certain amount arrogant and disrespectful to sell it. Flat Bob says, don't forget Upton Sinclair, Bruce. Hard to get a man to understand something that which his salary depends on him not understanding. I'm not sure Shiva's salary is dependent on the shape of the Earth. I mean, obviously, there's the optics. If he came out as a flat earther, that would cause some, because obviously in quackademia and the establishment, genetic logical fallacies are prominent. So if he came out as a flat earther, they would paint it as if he's dumb and his other research isn't valid. Because whether he is or isn't a flat earther, either the research is valid or it isn't valid. Either it adheres to the scientific method or it does. By the way, his GMO stuff does. I've looked over it. I mean, this is a smart guy, or formerly a smart guy. Aaron says, part of Shiva's problem could be his name itself. One of the attributes of the god Shiva is destroyer of worlds. So he may be coming into this thinking of worlds as other balls in space. Yeah, but I mean, does he not realize how weak it is that he can't defend his position at all? Like, he's so cowardly, he never even stated his position. Like, if you don't have a position, that's fine. State that. But he hasn't even done that. So, like, are we to assume he believes the establishment? I mean, he's talking about gravity and the mantle as if it's true. So, we were clearly led to believe that he believes the establishment heliocentric model based on that. Otherwise, why would he bring that stuff up?
None of this is. I like math,
right,
and experiments.
So I have one for you if you allow me to show it to you.
I know I keep stopping this every 2 seconds, but I have to, because that's how quickly the goofery is streaming from his mouth. I like math, so I don't care about looking at reality. So if he, 1 + 1 unicorns is 2 unicorns. Since Shiva likes math, does that make unicorns real? Or 5 Bigfoot plus 5 Bigfoot. Or let's talk about, like, 5 interdimensional Bigfoot zombies plus 5 interdimensional Bigfoot zombies equals 10 interdimensional Bigfoot zombies. So because we like math and the math is perfect, does that mean that interdimensional Bigfoot zombies are real? Just the level of gopher here. Flat Bob says it's going to be a 10-part series. I can just feel it. You know what's funny? This whole interview or whatever conversation is like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And we've already spent way more time on that. We're not even halfway through. BB says, I like kittens. Here's the thing, though. People that like kittens, I'm not sure that they would say they don't care about reality or the universe or nature just because they like kittens. Flat Bob says, I like fallacies. Oh, man. Would anybody be surprised if Shiva Ayyadurai just broke out in songs right now? Fallacy. We got the theme song here. This is gonna be the MINDSHOCK theme song.
Fallacies, 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 fallacies. Fallacies, 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 fallacies.
Wouldn't it be funny if Shiva's phone rang and that was the ringtone?
All I know, David, is that it is very difficult in science or engineering to make something, build something, validate something.
So again, I mean, Shiva's just becoming the king of red herring logical fallacies, of diversion logical fallacies. What does how hard something is have anything to do with anything? And build what? Like, build a tiny little footbridge? I mean, that's, I mean, it's not super easy, but that's a lot different than, building the George Washington Bridge or something like that. So, but in either case, I mean, what does that have to do with anything? Oh, man. I mean, what does it have to do with anything? This is tough. I mean, I'm running out of steam already, and we're only, how far are we in here? We've only been going for a half an hour, and I'm kind of exhausted. I'm more exhausted calling out Shiva than even Sartain. Even Sartain with his verbal diarrhea record-setting fallacy spew. That was less exhausting than dealing with Shiva here.
Sure.
And it takes great amount of effort to someone to have made this, okay?
You know, I have to give Craig props here. I have to give Craig and all these other goofs props here. Because at least they're not that cowardly, because Shiva is so cowardly. He's not even willing to say, he's holding up the cell phone and he says it takes great effort to make this. Yeah, of course it does. What does that have to do with anything? Because no matter how brain dead and vegetative goofs like Craig, Dave McKeegan, McToon are, at least they have a certain amount of, what should we call it? I mean, I guess you can call it audacity. I don't want to call it, it's not really bravery, but at least they're willing to make the point. They're willing to actually make a reification logical fallacy and say none of this would work if the earth was flat. But Shiva is so cowardly. He's not even willing to actually make a point about it. He's just going to say, oh, it takes a lot of effort to make the phone. He's so cowardly, he won't even state his position, because I don't believe he said he believes the earth is a globe. Now, he did bring up the mantle curvature, and he brought up gravity. So, you know, we can deduce from that he, I don't know, would he have done that if he weren't a globe earther? I don't know. I don't think he would have, because why would he do that? But the cowardice is even beyond Craig's here. I mean, I think we have to give Shiva the Coward Award. I don't believe anybody's been more cowardly in any kind of flat earth discussion or debate than Shiva. Seabass says, maybe the first question that should even be asked before a debate is even decided to be made is, do you believe that a Freemason getting a concussion and hallucinating from an apple dropping on his head is how gravity was discovered? Aaron says, maybe Shiva's really into stand-up. Okay, so is this some kind of a comedy act by Shiva? So, hold on a second. Is Shiva performing a satire on how globe earthers argue? See, now we're getting into some interesting theories, because I would believe if he's smart and quirky enough, I would believe that that could be a possibility. Is Shiva doing a parody act here? A satirization of how a globe earther argues? Seabass says, technically he is living true to his name. He is destroying this debate. Matari Sensei says, he did marry a comedic actor. Did he? I don't think he married the nanny. They were just in some kind of relationship. And that's kind of a stretch. Flapop says, not even close. Heracles says, wishful thinking, bro. I mean, I don't know, he does seem kind of angry. You would think he would be more play goofing, like kind of like a Steven Crowder in his impersonations. If anybody's seen Steven Crowder, some of his parody defenses of like abortion or some of the trans issues, like he actually argues better than the people that are serious in the debates on those positions. Lord Zed, were you not here for part 1? Were you not? I was laughing for a good 10 minutes, because I did not see that one coming. I mean, you cannot make that stuff up. Yeah, I even put up receipts. Hold on, I'll put it on the screen. Oh wow, YouTube's being weird. Okay. Yeah, you missed episode 1. Shiva Ayyadurai was in some kind of relationship with the nanny. I don't know, he looks a lot happier and healthier back then. I don't think that was that many years ago. It wasn't that many years ago. I think it was less than 10 years ago. He looks happy and healthy and reasonably intelligent in this image, in stark contrast to the man sitting here in this jacket indoors. Yeah, I mean, maybe there was some kind of MK Ultra frying of his brain because he was going up against, he was exposing GMOs. Like, he's got a lot of scientific literature exposing GMOs. So the establishment wouldn't like that. So did they have the MK Ultra, I actually forgot her name, the nanny, Fran Drescher. They had the MK Ultra Drescher somehow fry his brain. I mean, maybe she slowly poisoned him with something. Maybe she was fluoridating his water or his food to really destroy those brain cells. Flat Bob says, right when the flat earth started blowing up. Interesting. Wait a second. Flat Bob, are you postulating the powers that be anticipated the intellectual powerhouse, the intellectual anti-establishment powerhouse that is Shiva Ayyadurai would expose all of the conspiracies within flat earth scientific debate? So they preemptively had Fran Drescher installed as a relationship option for him, and she was somehow fluoridating his food or water to fry his brain so he wouldn't be able to expose the heliocentric grifters. Is that your postulation, Flat Bob? That's interesting. That's really interesting, Flat. That would explain a few things about this encounter, let's call it. I mean, wow. That's an interesting theory. The powers that be, with a preemptive strike utilizing the nanny against Shiva Ayyadurai specifically, so he wouldn't be involved in the flat earth exposés. That is very, very interesting. I mean, that would explain quite a few things, wouldn't it? Yeah, apparently his partner was Fran Drescher between 2014 and 2016. So yeah, that was right around the time Flat Earth was let out of the bag and going viral online. Lord Zed says, I changed my mind, this guy rules. Well, see, the thing is, he is that potent of an enemy. I mean, he's one of the top guys bringing down the GMO cult and exposing the evils of GMOs. Now, obviously, that's a major blow against the corrupt establishment scum that are trying to destroy humanity. Flat Bob says, haha, no, I'm saying he looked happy 10 years ago, then Flat Earth came out, and he's been battling it internally for years, and he can't debunk it, so he looks so miserable now. That's a less fun theory, though, isn't it, though? Isn't my theory a little bit more fun? Because the establishment really didn't want this guy on the Flat Earth side. Just because of look at the damage he did to the GMO industry. If he was a Flat Earther, I mean, it'd be all over. It would be all over. This MIT engineer, multiple degreed, credentialed, I mean, for the people that don't understand credentials fallacies, I mean, that holds a lot of weight with the average goof. That holds a lot of weight. So my idea about an MK Ultra preemptive strike to prevent Shiva from being involved in logical, scientific, flat earth discussions, I think that's a more fun theory. Seabass says, maybe she's like most of the witches in Hollywood, sucked his soul out. Of course, there are guys who do the same to their partners as well. It's like a community of incubi and succubi. Yeah, I mean, so she's a hardcore Hollywood Democrat, so you might have a point there. I mean, if she wasn't a Democrat, I mean, who knows? But she's a hardcore Democrat, so yeah, I mean, this is getting crazy. We're firmly in MindShock land.
I have great value for people who make things these days. Okay.
Sure.
So we have to honor that. So all of these statements that people just make.
Wait, what is he talking about? Honor that? Honor what? On a blank sheet of paper, there's nothing to honor on a blank sheet. If you're going first principles with a blank sheet, I mean, what is there to honor on a blank sheet? I think this might be the record for the amount of times I've had to pause a video to comment on the goofery. I mean, which is kind of wild, right? I mean, who expected Shiva to be more goofy than Craig? Or even Destiny? Because Craig and Destiny aren't talking about going blank sheet. They're not talking about going first principles. They're not talking about adhering to the scientific method. I mean, wow. Wow. Aaron says the pic of him in the chair looks like, can we just get to Roller Jam now? Well, actually, Flat Earth Dave looks more like he's bored with Shiva and he just wants some Roller Jam.
Whether you make it or others, I do actual experiments even go against the scientific establishment, okay?
I get it.
At the end of the day, I win because I get data. It matches the hypothesis I made, and I have data to validate it, okay?
So if you allow me to show you my data that will validate my hypothesis, and you can tell me where I'm wrong.
But I want to get the hypothesis clear. The hypothesis you're saying is if you take 2 points on the Earth, any 2 points, anywhere, that you're saying that it is not going to match the curvature of X, you know.
Correct.
X, so let's just get it very clear, okay?
Correct.
But the hypothesis you're saying is that I would be more precise if this is what you're saying. If you take 2 points, the distance between those points, if it's an arc, right? The circumference of the Earth is, let's say, 2 pi r, whatever the radius of the Earth is. The arc of that particular point, right, or the arc length, if it's in fact following a radius, is going to have a certain distance at any point based on that curvature, right?
Sure.
Now, this all depends on the, you have to measure this very carefully, and you have to also look at there's local changes within any 2 points, right? Because
that's why we do it. That's why we do it over water or the Great Salt Flats in Bolivia. We measure there, and those places are level.
But you're saying there's 2 points, and then your experiment is going to say that we're going to go measure between these 2 points.
Correct.
Which are, and you're going to choose a location. Okay.
Yep.
What you're saying is, what is the location you're choosing here?
So this is a reservoir, and it's frozen, and then we have a camera 6 inches off the ice. So it's at night, so it's hard to see. But we put these lights out here. Okay, 4 lights, right? 8 miles, 7 miles, 6 miles, and 5 miles. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but according to the globe math, what they tell us, right? This one should be more than 30 feet below the curve, behind the curve, right? This one, 22 feet.
Let's just do the math ourselves. What is if we just look at that, what is the curvature? I mean, I can get out a calculator here.
Okay, finally we can get to a point. I mean, just real quick, before I give Shiva his first brownie point here, for not running like a coward from doing the actual calculation on the spot. Like, who remembers Bryant Myers? Let's do it later. I'll do it later. Like, that's also cowardice there. But Shiva's been the most cowardly. But now he's actually willing. He's actually willing to engage with the point that Dave made. I mean, this is actually kind of curious to me, because he's been the absolute most cowardly out of anybody that's ever discussed this topic. But now, all of a sudden, he's actually willing to engage. That's interesting. I mean, this is really interesting. I mean, does he have a split personality? I mean, did he get MK Ultra'd by the nanny? So he's got these fractured psyches. Does he love math so much that as soon as Dave brought this up with all these numbers, he split into a different fractured psyche and now all of a sudden he's not a coward and he's interested. Is that what's going on here? Because this was the least cowardly. I mean, this is a true point of honesty. He's actually willing to plug in the numbers, and he's admitting he doesn't even know what the numbers are. So this does not appear to be some kind of trying to gotcha Dave. Like, it seems like he's actually genuinely curious as to what the numbers are going to be. I mean, this is unprecedented in this so-called encounter. Because he's probably been the absolute worst person to ever discuss this topic until this point now. Now, maybe this is all going to fall apart. That's what I'm surmising. Like I said, I skipped around through this interview before. I don't remember this part. So, I mean, we'll see if this continues degenerating into a complete train wreck where he doesn't actually plug in the numbers. But at this particular point, I mean, this is a small brownie point of redemption for Shiva Ayyadurai. Like, this is the first we've ever seen of him act. This is his first moment of honesty and non-cowardice this entire time. So, I mean, I'm having trouble. Like, I don't know what to make of this guy here. I mean, if he has been MK Ultra'd by the nanny, are these just different fractured psyches? And we're getting a different one right now? I'm trying to really think about what could explain his interest in wanting to do the calculation, because he previously stated he doesn't care about any of this. Like the actual shape of the earth, the nature, reality, but he cares about math. So now, obviously, this is actually a math equation, so I guess he cares about math? I mean, this is just weird. This is just plain weird. Does anybody have any theories on what could account for his sudden shift into honesty here? Or at least possibly. Like, let's see how this plays out, obviously. Like, we need to see how this plays out, but I'm really not sure what to make of this moment right here. Because he's been consistent in his cowardice thus far. He's been very consistent in his cowardice and goofery. But now, this is his first moment of inconsistency into the direction of honesty. And I'm trying to think of something, because again, I've never seen any kind of encounter like this before. So, how can we decipher this? I mean, I'll let it play through to see how it ends, because maybe he's just going to revert back to cowardice. But if he doesn't, and if he's really willing to do the math right here, right now, unlike, for example, Bryant Myers. I mean, Bryant Myers was petrified. He wanted nothing to do with doing the calculation in the moment. He just said, I'll look at it later. Like a 4-year-old. Like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. I'm not going to do it right now. I don't feel like it. I can, but I won't. Oh, man. The goofery never stops on this particular subject, which is why it is one of the best subjects for developing logic and reason and learning psychology. It's one of my favorite. A lot of people complain about all the flat earth stuff. It's not about advocating anything is true or untrue. It's just about the logical analysis itself of the argumentation and the psychology behind it. Highly, highly educational stuff here. Let me bring up an image here just for reference so we can see what they're doing and see how they calculate this. But yeah, I mean, this is actually finally getting kind of interesting instead of painful. If Shiva continues being honest here, I mean, this could actually get interesting potentially. Now, for some reason, I'm just doubtful that I'm not even sure he's going to go through with it. But so just for reference here, so everybody can see how you would use the Pythagorean theorem for proof of curvature. So again, this is a classic classic establishment chart here from establishment academia. I mean, this is quite old. This predates the rollout of Flat Earth. I mean, it says 2015 here, but that's the adjustments here. I've seen a very similar image like this in a textbook from well before 2015. So anyway, yeah, so this is the basic Pythagorean theorem here. So it's not hard to understand. I mean, it's a little above preschool level, unlike the scientific. I don't know if they're doing this in preschool. I don't think they are. I don't even think they're doing this in kindergarten. This might be more closer to like 5th grade and up. But let's see. Let's see how this plays out here. Let's see how this plays out. All right, let me see if anybody's come up with anything in the chat first. Seabass says, what if Hollywood was just part of the bloodline and any of them being MK'd was just them acting? I guess Shiva could have just been a pet or something, but I think if he was in a real relationship, MK wouldn't be that what he went through. BB says, let's take guesses if Shiva will actually go through with the math stuff in its entirety. That's a good idea. Let's do a poll. Let's do a poll. Because usually in Flat Earth debate, most of these guys cowered out. But the majority of them won't even make the step to let's do it right now. Because it wasn't even, Dave was not the one saying, let's do the math right now. It was Shiva. Shiva was the one who says, well, let's do it right now. So let's see what all the listeners think. The poll is up right now. Will Shiva complete the entirety of the math calculations here? Ethan W. in the chat here. Bruce, I just got here, but this whole section of the interview gets confusing because 8 inches per mile squared is not the Pythagorean theorem. Well, you're using the Pythagorean theorem, but you're making the adjustments for the mile. So it's not the theorem itself, you're just utilizing the theorem and then making the calculations, because obviously it would increase exponentially. I don't think anybody claims that that's the Pythagorean theorem itself. It is obviously not. I mean, I think this chart gets it pretty clear, you see here? Miles, feet, inches. Because obviously it's an exponential drop, because eventually you're going to end up on the other side. If it's a globe, you'd end up on the other side eventually. So that's a rough estimate, up just a calculation, 8 inches per mile squared, up to a certain point. But the Pythagorean theorem portion of it is in relation to the globe. So that's an approximation for a portion of it. So, I mean, I don't think it's that confusing. Did that make sense? Seabass says, stands at top of big hill, I prove the globe using Pythagorean theorem. Ethan says, Shiva is confused because of Dave here. 8 inches per mile squared is an algebraic formula for a parabola. Yes, but it's in reference to the shape of the Earth. So you see that, you can see the triangle here, though. Right? If the assumed radius, right? I mean, you have to prove the radius, but if you're assuming the radius, you see the chart here? Because this is on a sphere. Because you could have a parabola on like a convex non-sphere shape, obviously. But this is in relation to a spherical globe. Shaggy says, people who use the word scientism never took the time to learn real science, not grade school in the first place. Actually, the people exposing scientism are incredibly well credentialed. I mean, how do you think I learned about it? I learned about it from the PhDs that went through all of it and know the dangers of it. I mean, there's actually entire conferences on scientism, and all of the speakers who even coined the term, or maybe not coined, there's actually some debate about that and who used the term first. But in modern times, there's established, highly credentialed individuals, for the people who fall for the appeal to credentials logical fallacy like you just did. I've actually never heard someone use the term scientism who didn't understand the science the scientism side was pretending was science, because that's what scientism is. Scientism is using religious dogmatic ideology and pretending it's scientific. So you would actually have to understand what is or isn't scientific in order to even use the term scientism. How many times have you heard Neil deGrasse Tyson use the word scientism? How many times have you heard the person arguing on the side of the establishment use the word scientism? If they were honest and competent, they would be initiating the use. They would say, obviously, scientism is really bad, just this blind faith in authority. And this is how we clearly distinguish between scientism and science. Like if Neil deGrasse Tyson actually said that, I mean, people would take him more seriously because he would appear more honest. But he can't ever use the word scientism because it exposes his grift and his bootlicking of the establishment, because he's obviously not on the side of actual science. I mean, how many times have you heard any climate grifters use the word scientism? Or any big pharma cultists? If they were honest and competent and they were on the side of truth, they would be the ones using the word scientism, but they don't. Oh, Lord Zed's opening a can of worms. We might need a nanny deep dive. Uh-oh. That would be a multi-hour. Okay, so the poll is in. 75% say Shiva will not do the math equations to fruition. Alright, so let's continue here. Right, Ethan W., you got it. Yeah, so the 8 inches per mile squared only works for a portion of the globe. Correct. That's the portion we're discussing here. The Pythagorean theorem is just in relation to the globe as a whole. Shaggy says, unless you have taken the time to actually learn relativity, how could you know it's wrong? Well, if you have comments, I mean, yes, true. You would need to know relativity. If you haven't checked out the Run Z Cow dismantling of it in easy to understand terms here in MindShock, check that out. Yes, that is true. You'd have to know, you'd have to understand the claims of relativity to a certain point, and special relativity, which was created because relativity doesn't work. But yeah, and all of the assumptions made. If you understand the scientific method and you understand the house of cards that relativity is, because relativity is like the opposite of first principles. Because relativity is assuming A, B, and C, and then engaging in E, F, G with the assumption that A, B, C is true without proving A, B, C. So it's bunk from the get-go. Alright, so let's continue here.
Curvature is you can go to curvature calculator.
Mike, let's just do the math ourselves.
Yeah. So it's 8 times 8.
Hold on. So I'm going to bring up a spreadsheet here, okay?
Yep.
So what is a curvature from point A to point B?
The curvature that it's supposed to be is 8 inches per mile squared. So you got 8 times 8.
8 inches. 8 inches is the curvature per mile squared.
8 inches per mile squared. Because if it was 8 inches per mile, that would just be a ramp, right? It's exponentially curving faster and faster, right? This formula is a parabola after like 2,000 miles. Nobody can see 2,000 miles. So we're just doing this. It works. It actually gives the
No, you're saying if this point is 0, the parabola is going like this.
Correct. And after about 2,000 miles, it's not valid anymore. But
so
up to 2,000 miles, it's within a couple of feet.
Right. But if you just take a simple parabola, okay, just basic like algebra. Let's say here's flat and here's the y-axis down this way. So if this is 0, 0, you're saying it's going to go like this, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what is the equation of that curve? Y equals what? Minus what x squared?
It's the Pythagorean theorem, right? It's 8 inches.
Well, it's not Pythagorean. It has to be. It has
well, you
to
can
be.
measure. You can measure the radius, right?
Yeah, but what is the equation? Y equals minus what is k x squared? That's what I'm asking.
You know what? The way I look at it is that we just use the Pythagorean theorem, and it works out.
It's not the Pythagorean theorem. It's a parabola. If you're saying it's a curvature, right?
Yeah.
If this is 0, right, it's going to curve like this. So what is the equation? Y. I'm just asking what's the equation? Y equals minus something x squared. What is that?
Let me show you the
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying, Ethan W. Dave kind of confuddled that. So, you see here, the derivation is from the Pythagorean theorem because you have the y-axis and the x-axis here from the presupposed radius. Now, obviously, it's an issue that the radius is presupposed. But this is, if it's a globe, because again, if it's not a globe, obviously it's not the Pythagorean theorem. So I guess that's where Dave didn't explain it as well. This is basically globe math. This is globe math. So it is kind of weird that Shiva doesn't even know it or can't conceptualize it. But yeah, Dave did not do a good job with that at all, because it looks like I think Shiva's thinking Dave is describing the flat earth math. And that's what's causing the issue. Because if it's not a globe, there is no Pythagorean theorem involved here. So, yeah, I guess that's what's causing the confusion here. I guess I'm trying to think of what the easiest way to do this would be. Because Shiva, if you plug in the presupposed radius of the Earth, and you presuppose all of these variables to get the globe equations, I think Shiva's not understanding that Dave's point is that it doesn't match the globe math. I think that's what's being lost here.
easy way to do it. All right. Where is it? Okay. So.
Well, that's one of the easiest ways. It's just y equals just simple algebra.
So we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's a Pythagorean theorem. So if we put that on a globe, they tell us the radius of the Earth is this is the radius. And we went out X distance, this would be the drop right here. So they tell us the radius is 3963, another made up number, right? But that's the official story. So this is not the scale, of course. So we got our radius. If we went
Okay. If Shiva isn't being dishonest here, perhaps this is all, whether it's Nanny Fine's fluoridization of Shiva's brain, is Shiva not under, because Dave is kind of jumping back and forth between globe and flat. And I think Shiva is not understanding that Dave is talking about the falsification of the globe math here, as opposed to flat earth math. It seems like Shiva doesn't understand the difference there. Because if Dave's a flat earther, obviously he doesn't believe this globe math. And yet he's citing the globe math, so I think there's a disconnect with Shiva here, where he might not understand the difference there. Shaggy, you only need to know the you can just start relativity and it's already presupposing. Like, for example, if I made a new theory, theory of X, so these invisible flying spaghetti monsters require you to pay taxes to them. So because of that, we have to do this to pay the taxes. So already you know that's not valid because there's no proof of the invisible flying spaghetti monsters. Now maybe they're real, but the theory's not valid because it's not a first principle theory. It's not a scientific method theory. So you don't really need to know the deepest understanding of the theory X I just came up with of just this really, really complicated tax payment system to the invisible flying spaghetti monsters, because the invisible flying spaghetti monsters have not been established. So I can make the most complicated tax collection system that you wouldn't understand, but you wouldn't need to understand the exact mechanics of the tax collection system for the invisible flying spaghetti monsters because the invisible flying spaghetti monsters have not been established. So again, this is why basic logic is important, because if you don't have the basics of logic or the scientific method, then you'll be missing these points. Aaron says, Shiva understands Dave, he just doesn't give Dave credit, and Dave is too polite to correct. Well, yeah, if Shiva's dishonest, then that might be what's going on. So, alright. Shaggy, so you don't understand what science is. Science is a methodology in alignment with the scientific method. It's not necessarily about the predictions. The predictions are irrelevant if independent and dependent variables and controls have not been delineated. I mean, that a lot of scientism cultist goofs, like, that don't understand the basics of the scientific method, they're always focused on science in relation to predictions. Predictions is a small part of it, because, you know, a psychic making all these accurate predictions, that doesn't mean they have psychic powers. The prediction by themselves, it's like the Bigfoot mailbox fallacy. If I predict that Bigfoot is going to bring the mail at a certain time tomorrow, and I go check the mailbox and the mail is there, I predicted it, that means Bigfoot is real? No, it doesn't, because we don't have the dependent variable, the independent variable, and the controls to make sure because it could have been Mothman, it could have been an interdimensional, some kind of interdimensional ghost entity, or it could have been the mailman. So without these variables, the prediction itself means nothing. And you just proved, Shaggy, that you don't really understand the scientific method. Otherwise, you would understand how the dependent and independent variables and controls are what separates science from scientism. It's a pretty common mistake from narcissistic goofs attempting to educate others on what science is or isn't and getting triggered about the word scientism. So thanks for being that example here, Shaggy. Examples are always welcome here.
$100 miles out, we can square the numbers and figure out what the drop would be, right? So the hypotenuse would be.
No, I gotta look. I gotta understand it simply. Let's just. You just said it's something x squared, and you said it's a parabola.
3963
squared
times squared times 100 squared,
right?
Equals the hypotenuse of 15,715,000 feet.
But then you have to take the square root of that.
Correct.
To come to which point you're out in outer space then.
So we're up in the air, right? But if you subtract the radius from that, it comes out to 1.2615 miles, which is the drop. 1.2, which is 6,660 feet. At 100 miles, there would be over a mile of drop if the Earth was curved, right?
Let me look. So you have, go back. Let's go back.
I'm not sure Shiva's acting here. He seems genuinely engaged for the very first time here. He's not saying, oh, I don't care about that. Time out, time out. Like, we have to respect the phone. He seems genuinely engaged for the very first time right here. So I mean maybe he's acting, but he's actually putting effort. If he is, he's actually putting effort into it, unlike everything up to this point. No, Shaggy, the burden of proof is on positive claims. If the dependent variables, independent variables, and controls have not been clearly delineated, you don't need to know anything about anything, because it's not scientific. It's like a psychic making predictions. Science must adhere to the scientific method. Otherwise, it's not science, by definition. Because that's the methodology. It's not just, oh, predict it, and if it's true, and then, oh, well, you have to understand every aspect of everything, even if a dependent variable, independent variable, and control has not been presented. And that's not how it works. So Shaggy doesn't even know what science is or how it works.
Okay, so hold on. You're saying the radius is 3,963 miles. You go 100 miles. And at that point, if the Earth was flat, right?
If the Earth was curved, we'd have the difference of the radius.
Yeah, but before you go to
here.
No, but that's a flat Earth model.
No, that's the globe model.
Okay, this might be where I need to check out. He thinks the curvature formula is for the flat Earth model? What? What are we even discussing here? Why would he even be presenting the flat Earth map? Because he's saying there is no because how would you know there's no curvature if you don't know what the curvature is supposed to be? So how would you know there's no curvature if you don't know what the curvature is supposed to be? I mean, this is wow. This is wow. I mean, Shiva's tough here. I never thought I'd say this, but I think I could handle Craig for longer periods of time than Shiva. Well, Dave's presenting two different things here. He's presenting the difference between the Pythagorean theorem and how the curvature calculation is made on the parabola, but using the Pythagorean theorem as the base, because if the Earth is a globe, then there would have to be a radius. I mean, is it really this hard to understand, though? Like, do we really need to... I mean, because you could do this with, like, a tennis ball, right? I mean, you could do it on a much smaller scale to understand it. You don't really need to have something the size of the Earth with these huge numbers. I mean, on a basic level, like for the purpose of this conversation, you actually don't even need the exact calculation. Because I mean, obviously something 20 feet away wouldn't be beyond any kind of curve. I mean, this is just the basics of logic. If something is hundreds of miles away, there would have to be some kind of a drop, unless, of course, refraction or rarefraction magically pulls up everything to what it would be like on a flat Earth. Or some kind of undiscovered laws of physics that would cause this to happen. Or if we're living in some kind of simulation, there's some kind of an undiscovered law that causes that to happen magically. But yes, my apologies. That's all I can handle for now. Shiva's really been the toughest. Shiva's been the absolute toughest so far. But I am pleased to say we did make it past the halfway mark. So perhaps this won't be 10 episodes. Perhaps it'll only be 2 or 3 more. Oh man, so tough. So tough. Any final thoughts here before we close this one out? Again, I am just a mere mortal, and I do want this as comprehensive as possible, so I'm not going to be letting Shiva get away with any kind of goofery. We have to call it all out. Ethan, I think he is, like, in the image that he's bringing up, I think it's pretty clear that these are two different formulas, and he's clearly showing, to me, it's pretty clear how he's showing the difference in the visuals here. Like, for example, if the globe was way bigger, you could see or verse flap. I mean, these visuals are pretty helpful. I mean, I even think Shiva understood the visuals, but for whatever reason, he's not understanding. He's not understanding that Dave is falsifying the globe Earth math as opposed to presenting flat Earth math. So, that's it for now. Hope everybody enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast and these logical analyses. If you want to help support the podcast, help logic and reason return to a world where it's quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Like and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.